Welcome to Arpin Group's International Insights and part 4 of our 4-part micro-series that's focusing on COVID-19 and how it's affecting the global relocation industry. I'm Linda Casey, and in our final installment, we're going to ask each of our panelists where they see the future of the industry in their respective region of the world post-pandemic, and if they may have any predictions once things stabilize. So with that said, I would like to introduce our global panel. Representing Ireland and the United Kingdom, Keith Whelan, Arpin International Group's Managing Director, Ireland. Representing Germany and the mainland EU, Sebastian Sommer, Arpin International Group's Managing Director, Germany. Representing the Middle East and India, Lauren Inglis, Arpin International Group's Regional Director of the Middle East and India. Representing Singapore and Australia, Michael Johnson, Arpin International Group's Vice President, Asia Pacific Region. Representing China, Michael Hughes, Arpin Group's Vice President, Global Business Development. And rounding off our panel from the United States is host and moderator Jim Esposito, Arpin Group's Vice President, Global Strategy. Let's go to Jim Esposito and our panel.
Post the pandemic, in general, what do you expect the local economy to look like, and more specifically, what you expect the relocation industry to look like? And since I have you in front of me, Michael Johnson, let's start with you.
Everybody seems to have an opinion on that question, particularly what the industry is going to look like. But I talked with a very important client of Arpin the other day, global American-based company, I should say, and their travel's been restricted until June of 2021. So if that's any pattern in terms of how it's going to affect the industry, it's going to be extremely significant and quite frightening for employees of all levels within the industry. That said, we're certainly waiting for the U.S. to kind of hopefully rectify the situation, whether it's a vaccine. Obviously, with the election in the middle, when we talk about the economy, significant effect no matter what the outcome. So there's a lot involved at this critical time in the next 30 days, not to mention the next 3 months. So each country's got to do its part, I suppose, to hold up the fort in terms of the economy, make it through, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of possibly being creative, in terms of pushing things like domestic tourism, which wasn't a concept only 6 months ago. And I believe Mike Hughes would probably talk that China just recently had its biggest travel week in its history, which is incredible when you think about the numbers of people you're talking about under the COVID umbrella at this point and still being able to manage that. So we'll have to see. I'd love to hear everybody else's opinion on what they think as well.
I was hoping to get a prediction out of you, but I appreciate it.
What do I know?
Well, predictions are all guesses, but hopefully educated guesses. But we'll switch to Mr. Hughes. Michael, tell us about China.
So for China, on an economic situation, it's quite interesting. Like the U.S., from a geographic position, China is very large. So there's a lot of opportunities if international travel, for example, as MJ was just discussing, gets cut off. There are other outlets that you can go travel internally. There's a lot of places that you can go see. So that has helped redirect things as well. But the unique things that we see happening is a more aggressive approach, I say, to protect local economies. And by doing that, we see on the ground here, for example, once the virus was under control and the numbers were starting to dwindle, except for a few hotspots, major cities quickly, very quickly actually, started passing policies to allow support for small businesses. And what that looks like is every single evening, especially now during the holiday, but on the weekends during normal working days, they have set up night markets across the city. And this is for small businesses, people who sell jewelry, coffee shops, little cakes and sweets and things like that. Everybody that actually had to close down, and many of them not be able to come back after the COVID because of rents being so high, etc. The government has put up a lot of opportunities for these individuals to register and to be given these spaces at these night markets to build the businesses back up. That's just one of example. There is a lot more other examples of how they're trying to invest internally with the local markets. Keep in mind too is that it's not so much of a selfish desire to protect what they have locally. The population is in numbers is so immense that it's often very, very difficult for people outside of China to grasp the billions and billions of people. I mean, Shanghai alone is approximately, by residents, people registered from Shanghai, about 28 million people. And that may not be quite absorbed in the sense from people living outside of China and understand how packed that really is. But the immense amount of population condensed in certain cities throughout China has a huge impact on health, has a huge impact on education, has a huge impact on public safety, all these kind of things. So the government has put much more effort in quickly and streamlining it as fast as possible, programs and development for these type of situations that help to build a Shanghai up in terms of local small businesses having opportunities and outlets to sell their products, people for food, restaurants, those kind of things. Again, that's one area, but there are several other ones. From an international perspective, and this is speculation, so don't hold me to it.
I'm making notes.
It's quite unique. It's quite unique. And I say that because if you look back to when the visa changes happened, when they closed the borders, and they started to require a reapplication for a new visa to come in with a PU letter, etc. One of the most critical elements in that PU letter application was your contribution to the local municipality in terms of tax generation. And I found that very unique because the people that were granted access to coming back in were given thresholds from a company perspective of how much are they contributing to the local markets, how much are they contributing to the local cities. And I can't say for sure. However, impacting global mobility, that might have a long-term impact where you see a situation that is continually pushed forward to have a selective group of companies, a selective group of businesses coming into China that have the most benefit for the society and things like that. We're also facing a situation that is also very unique for China as well, is if we look back to their late 90s, around 96, 97, during the banking crisis that happened mainly in regions such as Hong Kong, and it didn't impact China, but South Korea, Hong Kong, a lot of the Taiwan, these areas were much more impacted. During that crisis, the banking crisis, there were an immense amount of layoffs, especially for expatriates that were based in Hong Kong. They were all sent home. And during that trying economic period, those jobs that were left vacant were very rapidly replaced with local Hong Kong talent. And what happened was they went through such a long stretch of time where expats were filling these mid-level to high-level positions that they came accustomed to the fact that we need to have international talent here. However, Hong Kong universities are fantastic. They are very high standards. The population there had, from a cultural perspective, from an educational perspective, leaps and bounds, very, very different changes over the years. If you look back from the 80s to 70s to 60s, etc. And what they found in the late 90s is that it's very easy to replace these positions with local talent. And since they had done so, even the talent that had been replaced, coming back into Hong Kong as expatriates, were much more at a higher level. So a lot of that mid-tier level positions were filled locally, and only the top tier levels, the C-suites, were left open for expats. Of course, there's exceptions to every kind of rule, I guess you want to say, but this is a generalization that you saw in a transition after this economic crisis, and this was back in '97. If we look at today, China has grown by leaps and bounds. China is not. I came here over 12 years ago. A decade in China it's lightning fast. The changes. A very funny story is a colleague had come to visit us in Shanghai, and we were driving down the street, and we were stopped at a red light, and there was a gentleman on the side in front of an office building, and he was polishing a sign. And I commented, I looked out the window, and I said, "Oh, that's new." And my colleague, she says, "The sign?" I said, "No, the 20-story building." And this is a part of the Shanghai that I go to every single day, and it's just a matter of they remove the fencing, and then wow, here's a 20-story building, and that change is just so fast. Where China 10 years ago was a very different place of what it is today. Most of the universities are producing international top talent. A lot of this talent is being recruited overseas to work with multinational companies in the headquarters in either Europe or the USA. These days, we may see a switch where those spots that are now left vacant for the expatriates that went back home may start to be more and more filled by local talent. And only time will tell if that's going to be the truth. But we saw that in Hong Kong, and it's highly likely that it would be happening in China.
Interesting viewpoint. Well, yeah, this situation is going to create a lot of change globally. It's unprecedented. Nobody's ever gone through this, to my knowledge. So we'll see how it goes from here. Lauren, how about you? What do you see in the way of local economy and global economy as it refers to relocation and moving services?
So I don't like predictions either, so don't hold me to anything. But I mean, judging from what we have seen, if I may, I'd like to probably answer your question in two parts. One about the UAE and the Middle East, and one about India. Obviously, that's the two major regions that we look after here. For the UAE and for the Middle East, like every other time that the oil price has dropped, I think, again, a case of when will it come back? Because over the years, we've seen it go bad. It's never been as bad as this, like you said, unprecedented times, but it's got to pick up eventually, I feel. And that's probably me just looking on the positive side again. But also over here, with the increase of e-commerce business and digital platforms in the region, I think we'll be likely to see big overseas companies acquiring more of the local Middle Eastern businesses. And we have seen it so far. We've already had the Careem car service was bought by Uber, which was a massive deal. And then recently, InstaShop, which is an online ordering delivery store, grocery kind of thing, was bought by Germany's Delivery Hero. Also, I think the need in terms of moving for future, there's definitely always going to be a need for construction. Infrastructure and blue-collar workers will remain for some time, at least until the region catches up and invests more in technology. And the huge positive that I take from all of this is that obviously many moving companies have had to embrace and implement technology in a faster way than what they would have planned. I think what we'll see in terms of global assignments, I really do agree with what Michael Hughes was saying. It's much the same over here. Localization in Saudi, in Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE has been pushed for some time now. But I think with this happening, it's definitely given each country a reason to really look within their countries. There's some brilliant and wonderfully new and young, trained up and skilled talent, local talent, that a lot of them unfortunately have never been given opportunities in their own countries and have moved overseas to gain international experience, but also just because the opportunities weren't there. And what I've seen from living over here for the last almost 9 years is when you see jobs being advertised, a lot of them are looking for locals only. So definitely, I think in the future, we are going to see a lot of that happening. And for us on the moving side, it could mean a lot more regional moves. You know, Saudis love coming to the UAE, and you see that very often. They come over for Eid and Ramadan to celebrate. And you know, vice versa. A lot of the Muslims that practice go to Saudi to celebrate the Hajj festival, which was actually just recently opened again last week, but on much stricter terms. But yeah, definitely, I think localization. I think in terms of if you look at it from maybe an HR perspective as well. Their job's been difficult enough, scrambling and trying to get through everything the last couple of months, being a pillar of support to their employees as well. But it's going to definitely change the whole way that global assignments are managed, and definitely create more remote working positions. So yeah, that's what I believe anyway for the UAE and for the Middle East, but yeah, I guess also globally. And then I would say my predictions for India. So a lot of large global companies are starting to actually invest in India. And India's export trade to China actually grew by 78% this year. So I think we'll also see a large amount of tech, construction, e-commerce, pharmaceutical, and production companies looking to actually have Indian headquarters. Apple is expanding in India, and that's already created over 4,000 jobs. That's just one example. And then you've got companies like Amazon and Flipkart, which have expanded and are doing very well in India, because obviously the residents are turning to online deliveries, which they never had before as much. And then you've got large Indian pharmaceutical companies which are collaborating and you know, as I said earlier, working on vaccines, teaming up with Oxford and companies like that. And the general belief at the moment in India is that it will result in an increase of health tourism, which will boost the economy. So that's their positive thinking over there at the moment too. And, you know, in terms of the relocation industry for India, I think we'll definitely see a big influx of skilled Indian nationals returning to their home country with all of these new job opportunities coming up, and quite possibly more interstate and domestic moves across India too.
Okay, it's helpful. And we will hold you to your prediction.
I don't.
Sebastian, how about Germany in that general region? What do you feel is going on?
Yeah, I think we have to see it from a European perspective as well, because we have heard now globally that localization is happening in every country. And looking at the European Union being one country less going forward, the investment will stay within the European Union, and having the Brexit situation in addition, this will increase the focus on the investment within the European Union, because there the working visa situation is so easy. I think this doesn't hurt so much. So that's something we see, and this is what I heard from our customers as well. They hold back from the international investments and focus on the investments within the European Union, and that's what we are thinking to see going forward, the increase of the intra-European assignments and not the increase of the international assignments.
That makes sense, actually. I agree with that. Keith, Ireland.
Well, Ireland is kind of unique in the fact that it's a very, very small open economy in comparison to each of the regions that you're talking about, maybe Singapore and size-wise. The focus for Ireland's really affected by what goes on outside. And there's a couple of big key criteria I think are going to affect next year. One is the outcome of the next 30 days in the USA, getting stability once a new president is elected or the existing president is elected. and then decisions can be made in terms of how the US economy is going to go on, and there'll be more certainty there. And that's going to breed confidence into the big multinational companies that come out of the US and invest around the world and invest in economies like Ireland's. Another big factor is going to be whether we find a vaccination or we find a treatment for COVID, because that's what's really going to end this situation that we're all facing. There's a feeling, I think, when this happened in March, we didn't know how long it was going to go on. Now we're going into what's probably a second cycle or a second phase of this. And I think as we come out of that into warmer weather, and hopefully with a number, I think it's 10 different companies are working on 10 different vaccinations or treatments for COVID, and they're on at stage 3, a record for this time. If some of those come through and actually work, that will immediately lift this whole shroud of doubt away from people. And hopefully the damage that's been felt this year will be a short-term kick to each economy around the world, and in particular Ireland, for me. The other big question is going to be how people changed and how they've been operating, because before now, and even in our own industry, a lot of people were office-based, and companies like to have people working together. When this happened, companies discovered that it's not necessary to have everybody, particularly in the office environment, working in the office environment all the way. As Michael Johnson touched on, some companies are saying, well, look, we'll work from home until the summer of next year. I think that's a key date, and not all companies have gone that far, but it's a key date because a lot of people feel that early next year is when the vaccination will come into place, and by the time it's distributed, there'll be confidence in people traveling again, and it might enable the industry to kickstart again. I've read a number of articles from around the world, and a lot of companies are finding that working from home doesn't suit everybody. Not everybody has the home environment to work from home, whether it's more than one person sharing a residence, children, childcare requirements, pets. It doesn't always make an environment that suits people to work from home, either full-time or even part-time. So there are people actually asking to go back to the office, asking to work in that environment again. And even from before the pandemic, working from home, obviously, people think, well, that'll stop movement happening. But I found that when I used to visit clients in their home, it might be a person from the US or from elsewhere overseas, based in Ireland, with a team in Ireland who are communicating with other teams around the world via the same way we're communicating now, and they've just been doing it longer. So I don't necessarily believe that the people that left in March will stay away, because they'll come back, they'll get back with their teams, and then you'll probably find they just travel less, and when they go to a place, they just won't be moving around as much and taking flights when they don't need to. We also have a situation here in Ireland that's a bit of a discussion, is because we have so many people working from overseas in our economy, a lot of people and a lot of companies have tax business based on people being in the country so many months of the year. And when our financial year runs from January to December, so people who left in March still have a lot of months in order to complete their 6 months in Ireland. So people are being asked and requested and encouraged to travel back now. Otherwise, there's going to be tax implications for them and for their companies. And although I don't think we'd be affected by tax, what it will do is, like it gave me when I traveled recently, it takes away the fear of traveling, because a lot of people have kind of locked themselves away and are not looking forward to that first step when they get on an airplane, or when they travel through an airport or travel to a new jurisdiction. And the need and the financial need and the financial penalties that might come across from the tax reasons might encourage people just to make that first step and get them back into the system and get them back working again. In terms of the effect of COVID on the economy, Ireland has fared quite well. If you were to look at it on a macro level, Ireland's economy has only shrunk by 0.4% throughout this pandemic. Looking at it more closely, there has been an increase in unemployment. Different industries have suffered against others. We have a very large tech and pharma industry, and both of them have grown significantly and kind of balanced out the economy. So there are job losses. There are going to be changes in the way we are going forward. We were in a boom when this began. Our economy was growing quite strongly. We're at almost full employment. There was property like office blocks and residences in the city areas were experiencing high rents. Now, the demand. People are concerned that the demand might mean that there might be a change to property prices. But I kind of feel that if we can get people back in the offices and back in the balances, it will level itself off, and it will keep going. It'll keep on a consistent level, and it won't be such a big dramatic drop next year. We're talking about factoring Brexit into the equation as well, that the Irish economy is still set to grow by about 2.5%, even accounting for COVID going on into the new year. So it's going to be an interesting process as we go along next year. My prediction is, if I'm going to be bold and give an uneducated prediction, would be that provided we get a vaccination or a reliable cure for this, and we can get the economies going again, I believe that people will come out of their shells towards next year. People will start to have the confidence to travel to other countries and settle again. And although they might be working from home, I don't necessarily mean they'll be working from home in their origin country, but they'll be working from home in their new country, and then they'll just travel less frequently. So I think if an area of the business is going to suffer the most, I'll be predicting the people movement business as opposed to the personal effects.
Yeah, I kind of totally agree with you in that it's gonna take a lot longer than we might have liked, but it will get back. Travel will come back, and a lot of it does have to do with a vaccine that's effective. And I don't think it's going to take that long for people to get comfortable once that vaccine is available and travel and want to work in different countries, want new experiences. Some of the slowdowns in the past, may have taken 3 months for people to get comfortable again. This may take 6, 12, but I think you're right. I think ultimately people will get comfortable, travel will start. And relocation will continue. Maybe not the same level or the same avenue it takes now, but it'll come back, and so will travel. Airlines will come back. Just going to take a while.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, folks. With that, I'm about to cut you loose, but I do want to wish you and your families stay safe and well, and we all get through this. And on the other end of that light in the tunnel, we'll start all over again.
After listening to our panel on what the future might bring, one thing is certain: there is going to be a change. And what COVID-19 has really done is accelerated the pace of having to implement new technologies that were previously being put off. We get it. People don't like change. But guess what? Change is the nature of things. We all need to evolve, right? Also important to mention is what Keith Whelan pointed out, and that is a vaccine could be a real game changer in the equation. And if that is the case, things could turn around very quickly as companies once again begin to compete with one another in the global marketplace. For the moving industry, preparation is going to be key, no matter where things end up. Being nimble, well-informed, and providing great customer service is the prescription for the day when it comes to managing this pandemic. I want to thank our great panel for coming together for our inaugural show, and I especially want to thank you, our audience, for joining us. We hope the insights were informative and useful. This has been Linda Casey for Arpin Group's International Insights, the micro-series that focuses on the trends and happenings that affect the international household goods, moving and storage industry. Till next time, take care everyone.